Boy and Dog, Part 7. Then abruptly, Spark holds up his hand and says, "Shh! Did you hear something?" Motion says, "What? What?" The guide's beguiling voice calls from the woods, "Guide to the land of happiness. Your dreams are there. Follow me." Spark frantically looks around. "Chip, I can't believe it. That same voice calling again. Let's go, quick." Chipper tries to stop Spark, but Spark pushes him away. Motion says, "Can I come too? Maybe my friend is there." Spark rushes towards the woods, says distractedly, "What? Oh, come if you want, but hurry." Motion and Chipper scurry to keep up. Traveling through dark woods, Spark is tense, frantic. Along with Chipper in Motion, he struggles through bleak woods and tangled bushes. Further on, a ragged, exhausted Spark falters through eerily twisted brambles and stumbles over gnarled roots, broken branches, but plunges on with ever greater determination. Then, at last, drained, Spark emerges from the woods to come to a dead stop. Motion and Chipper almost topple him up from behind. They see massive stone walls towering above the land of happiness. Two ponderous gates seal off the entrance. Nothing that lies within can be seen. The guide's honeyed voice is heard from inside. "You've arrived, little friend. Come in, come in." The heavy gates open and two indifferent guards emerge and stand on either side. The guide's voice calls again. "Ruler, your host, has delicious food prepared just for you, and a comfy room is waiting." Motion dithers behind Spark and says, "Should we come too, Spark?" Spark says, "What? Oh, course, come on." Spark stumbles through the gate, Chipper and Motion following. The land of happiness is an opulent compound spreading over great distances. Courtyards offering food, recreation, and entertainment areas surround clusters of apartments. Ordinary but elegantly dressed people lounge about, and dignified slaves, dressed in sack-like garments, move unobtrusively among the inhabitants. Spark, Chipper, and Motion are dazzled as they are met at the gate by a slave and led into the land of happiness. A few days later, inhabitants lounge in the courtyard on comfy furniture, surrounded by tables laden with delicacies. Arbors topped with artificial flowers supply shade for people who loll about, gossip, and just gaze into space. Children play lackadaisically nearby. A glowing, elegantly dressed Spark tentatively comes into the courtyard, watches the children shyly for a bit, then ogles the tray of sweets and whispers to Chipper, "Do you think we can just take some?" He carefully chooses a candy, then slips one to Chipper. Slaves dust the fake flowers woven around the arbors. Spark says, "Oh, are they dusting those flowers?" Then Chipper pulls Spark over to a tree. Spark rubs the tree bark and says, "Oh, this isn't real either, is it? Peculiar." A few days later, Spark and Chipper meander among good-natured groups of people fiddling about, while others dabble at making crafts or aimlessly tinker. Spark scans the different groups and says, "I wonder, could Papa be here somewhere?" But children scuffling nearby excite Spark's interest. All thoughts of his Papa disappear. A short time later, in Spark's garishly decorated room, sweets are everywhere. Spark and Chipper lean out of their window and see children passing by. Spark nudges Chipper and says, "Come on, let's go down." They run out. They emerge from their building as the children walk by. One of the boys is peeling an orange, and Spark says, "Hello." Startled at seeing a new fellow, the boy glances sideways at Spark, curious, but says nothing, dropping peels in his wake. A slave picks them up. Hesitantly, Spark joins them. They pass under an arbor, then, beyond, they find tables piled with sweets. Spark grabs at these delicacies. His companions show no interest at all. Nearby, youngsters kneel on the ground, listlessly shooting marbles. Spark pauses to watch, while the boys he'd walked with move on. Finally, Spark says, "Can I play?" Severe, one of the morose game players, shrugs and nods to a pile of marbles at the side. Spark chooses a marble. Severe says, "What's your name, anyway?" Spark says, "Spark." Leaf, an easygoing boy, takes candy from his pocket and says, "I'm Leaf." Another boy chimes in, "My name's Clem." And Clem nods deferentially towards Severe and says, "That's Severe." Severe scowls. Leaf points to a little girl kneeling on the sidelines and says, "That's Severe's sister, Letty." Letty shyly lowers her eyes. Then an exuberant, barely contained girl, Mayla, approaches the edge of the playing area and watches. Spark takes a turn with the marbles, then glances up and says, "It's fun playing all the time, but, don't you ever have chores to do or studies and like that?" Leaf takes a candy from his pocket and says, "Chores? Is that what slaves do?" The wrapper Leaf tosses away is picked up by a slave. Spark says, "Slaves do your chores?" Severe says, "Of course. Where do you come from, anyway?" Spark says, "A village a ways from here." Clem says, "Well, who does all your work, then, in your village?" "Well," says Spark, "the village folk. All of us work, of course." Mayla listens attentively. As Severe bends to make a play, his sandal strap breaks. He yanks it from his foot and jumps up and says, "Look at this." He slaps the sandal against his thigh, peers around. "Where are all the slaves?" Spark, without thinking, takes the sandal and examines it and says, "Oh, I can mend this." Mayla edges closer, watches. Spark frowns, studies the sandal, says to himself, "Not like Grandpa's makin', sure." He snaps a fake vine off of a bush, then entwines the sandal and the strap together. The boys watch curiously. Uneasily, Spark hands the sandal back to Severe and says, "Here, good as new made." Severe stares at it with distaste. Spark squats down to examine the marble setup and says, "You know, I've been looking for my papa," but Severe aggressively points the sandal at Spark and says, "Ruler wouldn't like you doing this." Spark says he wouldn't. Severe stoops down and tugs the sandal back on. Letty uneasily watches her brother. The other boys play in silence. Mayla scrutinizes Spark. Some time has passed. Spark bounds into his chamber, plops down on some pillows, and grabs a handful of candy. Chipper follows slowly. Spark says, "Oh, Chip, haven't these past weeks been wonderful?" Chipper settles down, woe begone, his head on his paws. Spark frowns. He's about to eat a candy, then pauses, feeling a bit guilty, and says, "Would Grandma like this, I wonder?" He ponders a moment and then says, "No, certain. She makes her own sweets, doesn't she, Chip?" Chipper's soulful eyes gaze up at Spark. Spark says, "Well, I'll have one of these, and one of these, and, oh, I'll take everything." He dives through the candies, then turns to Chipper. Just think, Chip. No chores, no early bedtime, no lessons. I could stay here forever. He pops another candy into his mouth. Chipper paws pleadingly at Spark, who jumps up, pushing him away. Stop that! You've mussed my tunic! He brushes furiously at his garment. Chipper, you spoil everything. Go away! Chipper creeps to a far corner. Then Ruler appears in the archway. Ruler has a dominant, overpowering presence, emanating an ingratiating charm tipped with menace, and he says, "Good day, young man." Spark spins towards the archway and sees Ruler. He is thrilled and a bit intimidating at meeting Ruler for the first time, and he says, "Hello."